97 The Game.
All righty, let's get right to it. Let's talk to Monte Poole, NBC Sports Bay Area, covers the Golden State Warriors and has done so for a long period of time. Monte, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. How you guys doing?
We're doing well. If I were to ask you this question, what answer would you give me? What's at stake for the Warriors this week?
Well, let's not get into the dynasty talk because the dynasty is already over. That ended in 2019. Yeah, they won a championship since, but dynasty sort of implies that you are winning. You're in the thick of it every single year, like the Spurs were. They didn't win, 20 championships, but they were a dangerous team for all those years. So I think what's at stake for the Warriors is that they got to figure out who they are as a team. 82 games usually is enough to figure that out, but in this instance, it's not. And so, to me, if they lose, this season has been a disaster. Everything from the Chris Paul acquisition was all about the postseason. They didn't bring in Chris Paul because they wanted to win 55 games. They brought in Chris Paul so that when we get to the postseason, we have a guy on our bench who can lead our bench crew that's reliable, low turnover guy, high assist guy, an orchestrator, an organizer. And so if they're one and done, that's a colossal failure. To me, they got to get through at least 2 games. And I know the second game's going to be a lot tougher. But if they don't, to me it says, okay, guys, it's time to start turning the page.
Monte, great stuff, man. You stay keeping it real. And I got to ask you this question because a lot of people think, we get out of bed trying to start something, and that's not the case. I love this team. I've watched this team this year, and I've seen the strides that Kuminga has made. But I want to say this. As this team has gelled over the last month, Monte, since the bilateral tendonitis in both knees and now Kuminga coming off the bench, I'm feeling a little nervous about him upstairs with his head game going into tomorrow night's clash with the Kings. I'm at your office. You're my doctor. Am I barking up the wrong tree? Am I seeing something that's not there? Can you talk to us how you feel about Kuminga here over the past week?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to think based on conversations with him, even before the knee thing popped up, that he's kind of past that mopey, pouty stage, and that he'll be fine because he understands it's really more about minutes than it is about who's starting. And so I don't worry about him. The thing I look at is that, okay, as long as he's healthy, will he continue to be assertive on the court? And he likes playing with Chris Paul. So I would think that those two would make some nice things happen on the court. I don't think JK will be an issue in terms of his attitude, his mentality. I think he's good there. But again, when you get to a certain point in the season, you ask yourself these questions. And the main question you ask yourself about a guy like Kuminga is he ready for the big stage? Because last year, he was a non-factor in the postseason for the most part. So he's come a long way this year. He looks like a guy who can give you something in the postseason. I think he can. But I think there's a part of me that says, let's really, see how it works. But I don't think the bench start thing is an issue with him right now.
Monte Poole joining us on 95.7 The Game, covers the Golden State Warriors for NBC Sports Bay Area. With the whole Kuminga and the tendonitis, and now he's coming off the bench, you kind of go back and listen to Steve Kerr from January when he was talking about the lineup of Kuminga and Wiggins together, and he talked about how, there were some challenges with that twosome playing together. As we head into the postseason, do you think, how much overlap do you think those guys will have in terms of Wiggins and Kuminga? Because it seems like Kerr might lean toward one or the other rather than playing them both.
Yeah, I mean, the minutes between those two were rough for a while. They kind of got ironed out with Draymond, and for a while they started Draymond at the 5 with Kuminga and Wiggins on each side. And it was good for a while. But it didn't work in the long run because I think Draymond had to do too much in the paint. And so, and they made the move to Trace Jackson Davis. That led, to me, the best Draymond is a Draymond who can kind of roam a little bit. He's not stuck to guarding one guy. And when Trace is there, Draymond now has a guy who's behind him that he trusts a little bit. I mean, it's not a Bogut situation where Draymond knows that Bogut's going to be back there, and Trace is a rookie. He's not the same caliber defender that Bogut was when Bogut got here. So I think this is the best Draymond. You know, you've seen it in the past few weeks, some of the plays he's making, the way he just mucks up the opposing team's offense in so many ways. I think if he's playing with Kuminga and Wiggins, he's got to be a little bit more judicious about what he does because those guys aren't really going to be protecting the rim behind him. Yep. So it's a little different dynamic. But in any case, I think Wiggins and Kuminga played better because Wiggins got better. The Wiggins we saw in the early this season, he didn't really appear fully engaged. And when he got better, I thought it clicked pretty well. When he got engaged and he was locked in, as we say, which didn't seem to be the case early in the season. But lately, he's been much better, much more intense about defense, and even offense. He's more assertive. So I think that's been the key, is that when Kuminga and Wiggins weren't good, it's mostly because Wiggins wasn't very good.
Good stuff, Monty. I've been consistent telling Steiny, you know what? If this team doesn't play Denver and somehow they qualify for a 7-game series, I like what I'm seeing. With that said, Friday night was just another example to me, standing-wise, Monty, that one game where, they can gain some traction for whatever reason against whoever it is. They can't get it. Can you share with us your thoughts driving home Friday night from Chase after that loss to the Pelicans? Because it was bitter for me.
Yeah. Well, more often than not, when the Warriors fall flat in the postseason and often in the regular season, there are two causes, and they're kind of work hand in hand. It's defense and it's turnovers. And when you're committing turnovers, you don't really give your defense a good chance. In that second quarter against the Pelicans, they had 9 turnovers, most of them live ball turnovers. They gave New Orleans 15 points in a quarter off turnovers. That's incredibly bad. So that's where the game was lost. I do think that, and Steve Kerr did, I asked him about this yesterday before the game. I rewatched the game when I got home, and I thought Trace Jackson Davis was pretty effective, but he only played 22 minutes. And Pods was not effective at all, and he played 27 minutes. And so I asked Steve if he, in terms of his rotational flexibility, if maybe, there could have been more room for Trace. And he said, I think the quote was just...
Yeah. I wanted to hear that.
What was the quote?
I wanted to hear it.
Well, that's a tease.
Because you texted Vine that our Pods plus minus took a beat in that game.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Monty, what did Steve Kerr say about Pods playing 27 and TJD playing 22?
Well, it wasn't so much about Pods; it was about TJD basically. Click. I said, he was pretty effective when he was out there, but only played 22 minutes. And Steve said, I think the quote was, "To be perfectly frank, I wish I'd played Trace a little more."
All right.
And I mean, I think that makes sense. I mean, which is why I ask about the rotational flexibility, because sometimes coaches get caught up in their rotations and they get rigid about the minutes and who's playing when, who's going to go into a game at a certain time, who needs to be out there now, who needs to come off now. And I just thought, Trace, given that he had 10 points off 5 of 7 shooting, he had 11 rebounds in 22 minutes. And the Pelicans are, I don't know if you've noticed this now, but they're a pretty long team.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of, and Trace is someone who I thought could have been better used and certainly more frequently used in that game. And I didn't think it was a game for Brandon, for Podziemski. I don't think it was a game for him. And, he wasn't able to do what he normally does quite as much. I mean, he rebounded pretty well, but defensively, he couldn't do much at all. I mean, he couldn't guard McCallum. McCallum was hard to guard, and so, of course, Trey Burke's 6'8". So it was a tough goal for him. I just thought Trey should be out there a little bit more, and I think Steve, in retrospect, thinks the same thing.
Monte Poole joining us on 95.7 The Game. He covers the Warriors for NBC Sports Bay Area. I mean, it was probably a month plus ago where Steve Kerr was talking about Steph and Steph maybe being a little bit fatigued. The second half of the season was solid by any standards, maybe not up to Steph's, but with the Warriors ideally looking at games Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, and then obviously the rest of the first round. He played 74 games. Clay played 74 games. What are kind of your expectations for Steph moving into this postseason, knowing that Steve Kerr talked about fatigue, weeks back?
Yeah, Steph played a lot of games this year. He had a couple of negative losses, but nothing that kept him out for several weeks, So I get that, but I think the great thing about the postseason, especially the first round, is that you got gaps between games. So the tough part for the Warriors is going to be getting through this first week. If they get through, I'm on the bridge here, and traffic is a little crazy.
Oh, we've heard.
Yeah, we heard.
And so, Steph, if you get through this week, it's a tough weekend. I think Steph will be fine, because then in the first round, I have at least one day between games, sometimes two. There's been instances where there's 3 days between games sometimes in the first round. So I think that's all good for him. I don't think Steph is tired per se, but I think mentally, he might be. I don't think he's physically tired. I think it's more mental than anything else. And I think this will freshen him up a little bit. And I think the rest that he's gotten in the past couple of weeks has been good for him. Not playing yesterday, I think that was good for him and Draymond. So I don't think that will be an issue going forward if once they get past these first two games. If they get past these first two games, I think they'll be fine.
All right, Monty. Hey, we'll let you go.
Thanks, man.
Be safe out there. Thank you for your time as always. And it should be a fun couple days. We'll see if it's a fun couple weeks.
There you go. All right, guys. Take care.
All right, it's Monte Poole, NBC Sports.